Hello, thank you for joining me for a review of Dazzling Brightness by Roberts Gellis, or possibly Roberts Gellis, because even though I've been reading this author off and on for most of my life, I've never actually been in the enviable position of being able to discuss her work with any real-life person. I've never met anyone who's also read this author. And that despite the fact that, according to Goodreads, she has been one of the most successful writers of historical fiction of the last few decades, having published about 25 meticulously researched historical novels since 1964. And you know what? Roberts Gellis is so fascinating an author that I might just sidetrack after this and make a whole nother video just about the author. Otherwise, I feel I'll be raving about her instead of this book. So, I was thrilled when I came across this book. Roberts Gellis, whichever, is one of those authors that when I find a new book by them, I am so thrilled that I instantly purchase it, of course, and then it will jump right ahead of my to-read queue and I will get stuck straight into it, which is what I did here. It's totally by coincidence that I'm currently doing an ABC challenge and I happen to be in the reading authors beginning with G because I would have read this whenever I got it. It is a 19s romance book in every sense of the word. You've got this glittering thing that I think is meant to be shadows or caves, and then you've got this cutaway man and a woman lying there, the woman wearing a diaphanous, very 1990s idea of what they wore in Regency England, and nothing to do with ancient Greece. And then you've got this. It's actually really sweet artwork. I don't know who did it. Never occurred to me to look. So Roberts Gellis has a number of series, but she also has the Greek myth series, which I didn't know about until a few weeks ago, in which there are 5 primary works, and this happens to be book 1 according to some places of the internet and not others. Others say that it's book 2. But what Dazzling Brightness is about is it's the story of Hades and Persephone. So on the back, in pure 90s romance fashion, he was the lord of the underworld, cast down by the gods themselves, untrue, by the way, into a kingdom of everlasting darkness, also not entirely true. She was born with mystical powers, not that we knew that, nor did she, into a place of eternal light. Nah, just Olympus, you know. Mere Olympus. And somewhere between the shadows and the sea was a world of treachery, danger, and unending desire. Sorry, couldn't bear it. The back is purple enough for the whole book, which is not particularly purple and not particularly romance. It's not a small book. Most of Gellis's work wasn't. This is 443 pages, and it is a retelling of Greek mythology that will stay with you even if you're not terribly into Greek mythology. Now, the story of Hades and Persephone as one that has been fascinating different authors, and they've been redoing it, but this is from 1994. That was before this current trend of retelling mythology stories in modern day terminology really came about. So I would say that Gellis is ahead of the curve there. While I knew about Hades and Persephone, I didn't really know the story terribly well. I've always liked the idea of Greek mythology rather more than the actual reading of the Greek mythology. And I've been to Greece, I've seen the museums, I've seen the archaeology, and it's fascinating. But reading Greek mythology has never been that easy for me. And so while I knew the story, I'd never gone into it. Gellis, however, did before going into this book. I'm going to read you a little bit from the author's note at the back. Maybe I'll even read you the whole thing. This book is a fantasy. Unlike my historical novels, in which I strive, though I do not always succeed, to obtain accuracy in every detail, in this book I have tried to carry the reader into an entirely different reality, the reality in which myths were the lives of all too human people. Although I've written a fantasy, I've taken few liberties with the major outline of the myth of Persephone and Hades. Thus I feel no guilt over minor deviations, because all myths in themselves are layered with millennia of changing accretions over some nugget of fact. For example, dragons, so prevalent in myth, may have been built on the folk memory of the lingering remnants of large saurians. So essentially, this large book with the story of Hades and Persephone, even though some of it is doubtless imagined and the real characters are purely by the author, the story itself, I fingers crossed, is actually close to the truth in some respects. And the two main characters are very real. We start with Persephone, and she is Demeter's daughter, but she's never been given a name. She's adult, late teens, early 20s, thus thereabouts. She's lived her whole life in Olympus, where Demeter is the queen of the corn goddess and blesses the rites of spring. Her daughter, she wants to grow up to be a reincarnation of her almost. Her plan is for her daughter to take her name, Demeter, on her deathbed, and thus perpetuate a kind of immortality for herself. And this is in Olympus, where the Olympians actually live very long lives. Anyway, not like the mortal folk, or the natives as they call them. So Persephone at that point had never been given a name. She was just called Kore, girl in presumably ancient Greek. And she's been kept in the temple. She hasn't really had much of a life. She's a priestess, and she's a powerful priestess, but she feels very much like a girl who has never had a lot of autonomy. And to some extent she's fought against that, even though Demeter assures her it's just because she loves her and she's keeping her. Right at the beginning, she's on the way to do a ritual of cleaning the corn goddess's robe in the river with a whole heap of other priestesses, led by one Dorcas. Now that is a name, hello bird, that I think we all know from mythology, and it became a popular name in England for a while as well. So Dorcas is here portrayed as a bit of a traitor to the temple and Demeter. She wants to become, we later find she's got a convoluted plan to become head priestess with the help of Zeus, with whom she is having sex. But it's Zeus, so he has sex with a lot of people. Anyway, Dorcas has let him know where Persephone will be unguarded, and he sends Hades to take her. Hades is portrayed as a very real character here, and so is Persephone. Neither of them are particularly godlike, which is on track for Greek mythological gods as I understand them. Most of them aren't particularly godlike. They're very human-like. Hades has his underworld, and he needs to feed the people in it, and he needs someone to bless the soil and bring the rites of the goddess of spring down, or he won't be able to do that. So he has gone to Zeus asking for a priestess, and Zeus has offered Persephone without Demeter's knowledge or her own. So Zeus kidnaps her down into the caves. Now, how true is this to the Greek mythology? I don't know, but still in the author's note here, Gellis says, the differences between my tale and that found in versions of Edith Hamilton's mythology, Bullfinch's mythology, or summaries of such works as the Larousse Encyclopedia of Mythology, from which the reader may be familiar, are largely differences in characterization. I have not wantonly deformed the myth to suit my plot, however. Actually, the mythological characters have been deformed over the years to make pretty adventure stories for cultures that no longer believed in them as gods. Thus I have felt free to go back to earlier traditions and earlier renditions of the characters, as described by Farrell and others, and have built my Hades and Persephone not only on the single myth of the rape of Persephone, but on many other myths that also mention Hades, Kore, Persephone, Demeter, and the others. I've consulted many scholarly works, and she has my full admiration for that. I have never found them easy to read with Greek mythology. I have read everything I could find about Demeter, Kore, and Hades, all of whom have many other names. I have also read whatever original sources I could find in translation. I have used other information I have discarded. For example, I ignored research that suggests that Kore and Demeter were different aspects of the same being. Do you hear that? That is my bird. My bird wants to participate in this review. Do you want to participate in this review? Or do you want to be an angry bird? Angry bird? Hello. You also want to talk about Kore and Persephone? Anyhow, it becomes clear from the many myths that mention invasion of the underworld by various heroes such as Hercules and that Persephone is no pallid, shrinking, homesick girl. She is indeed sometimes the dominant figure in the bargains made with invaders. And that Persephone is the one that we see in this story here. You've got a very, what starts as an initially overwhelmed character, overwhelmed by her mother's strength of will and her almost entrapment in the temple and its rites. But once she comes down to Hades, she matures as a really fascinating character. This is a woman in a romance, in very much the 90s romance style, but this is a woman that we can all vibe with. She's strong, she has her failings, she's aware of some failings, and then there's the romance. She and Hades fall genuinely in love. And if that was represented in the actual stories, then Gellis has done a magnificent job of portraying that. It's not insta-love by any stretch of the imagination. And while for 90s it's got a little bit of sex stuff in it, if you compare it with some of the modern young adult books that are coming out these days, this isn't spicy, this is tame. So if you're put off from these sorts of books by not wanting to read too many of those types of scenes, don't worry too much, go for Dazzling Brightness, it's fun. Korra is taken by Hades straight down into the earth, and when he gets there he finds he's gone to a cavern that he hadn't intended to. We find out about Hades. Yes, he rules the underworld, and that includes the ability to just sink through stone, through the walls of the caverns down to below, through rock into other caverns. It's a fascinating exploration of this cavernous underworld in which we initially find ourselves. At that point, Korra is not at all thrilled about being kidnapped, though there's no word that rhymes with tape beginning with arsine. I'm very glad that Gellis avoided that. And what we have got is he explains that he's kidnapped her on Zeus's approval. Now, Zeus apparently adopted Korra, as she was, after the death of her father, and so he believes that he has some sort of right to give her away. She, of course, does not agree, and Demeter certainly doesn't, because just as Persephone and Hades are falling in love and settling down to rule the caverns together, build a shrine to the goddess in the valley outside, and start planting grain, Demeter is going batshite crazy. In Olympus, she's accusing Zeus and his mages and everyone else of stealing and hiding Persephone from her. So you've got the Demeter story arc, then you've got the Persephone and Hades story arc, and then you've got what happens to Dorcas, which is fairly brief, really. Having gone completely crazy over what's happened to her daughter, she finally manages, Demeter that is, finally manages to make deals with Poseidon to give her sanctuary on Poseidon's Isle of, what is it called, Aegea? Something like that. Because she's trying to find a place where if she manages to get Korra back, she can keep her safe from Hades, which is virtually nowhere on Earth. Because Hades can just rise through the Earth and capture her again and go back down. Cool stuff. So she makes this deal with Poseidon, and we find out that Poseidon actually hates Hades. Zeus and Hades and Poseidon are all brothers, and I always wondered, reading Greek mythology, why Poseidon, who always seemed to be the most interesting of the gods, was so left out. And I knew it's partly because the Greeks, like many ancient peoples, feared and distrusted the ocean and everything in it. That was the outer region, monsters came from it, all the rest of it, and that was part of it. But having read this, I find that I know a lot more about the whole theme. So Zeus cast down his father, who was the original god, and Kronos, was that his name? I have forgotten his name. He cast him down and killed him. And he did that after Hades had been forced to flee from Olympus in case their father killed him. He fled to the underworld and was establishing his realm there at the same time as Rhea, the wife of Kronos, fled. Now at that point she had Poseidon and Zeus. Poseidon was about 6 years old and she hid him on this island in the Aegean, but she took Zeus with her. Eventually Zeus came down, cast down his father. With the help of his brothers, I think both his brothers. And as a consequence, he's got a good relationship with both of his brothers. But Poseidon hates Hades because at one stage he had a plot to throw down Zeus, as Zeus had thrown down their father, and to rule in Olympus. I don't know why you'd want to rule in Olympus, which sounds boring and political, compared to having an Aegean island all of yourself and all the ocean to swim in and krakens and weird triton animals to obey you. I don't know what's happening with Poseidon there. Anyhow, that's his plan. So he makes that agreement with Demeter that she and Kore can hide there if she manages to get Kore back. Demeter does eventually manage to fool Persephone into coming to her. The idea is that she will go back to Olympus with Demeter, bless the things in spring, adding her strength to Demeter's so that Olympus will not starve. Because in Hades, Persephone has found that she does actually have a gift. She always thought that she had no mystical gift, but apparently she does, and that gift is loaning strength to others. So she can loan her strength to Hades to make him immensely stronger. And she used to lend her strength to Demeter without Demeter admitting that to her or letting her know. So there's a lot here. And there's a happy ending with Persephone and Hades back in Hades, just as we know happens from the mythology. And there's an agreement that she will go back in spring to help Demeter bless the corn and fields of Olympus so that Olympus will not starve, but then she will return back to Hades. Fantastic story. I can't recommend it enough. So the romance is solid, but... Sorry, bird moment. The romance is a solid romance. But one of the things that I've always loved about the Gellis books is that, well, there is romance, and that romance in the romantic love sense, but also romance in the fact that she's telling this tale and you're totally swept up in it. That's the old version of English romance, a story that isn't real and that catches you in. It's been so long since I read a new Roberts Gellis book, and this one, it just reminded me how absolutely breathtakingly good a reading experience can be when it's an author you really love. So this is the first romance or bedazzling fantasy, if you will, that I've read for a long time. Delighted to have found it. I hope one day to find the rest of the Greek mythology series. I've never even heard of them before, but apparently they exist out there. Can't wait. Thank you for watching. I will do my best to produce a Roberts Gellis specific video soon, because I feel that I'm a very small channel size. I feel like most people here won't have heard of her because, like I said, I've never met another single person who's heard of her. And her books are so good. So I need to talk about those. Anyway, thank you for watching. Read good books. Even Roberts Gellis.